They trespassed. They lied. They built massive billboards on my ranch and thought I'd stay quiet. I gave them every chance to back down. They chose war. So I brought a bulldozer, tore down their empire, and dragged them into court. This is how I crushed an entire HOA. I bought this land to be left the hell alone. 60 acres of wild Texas earth, tucked away just enough from the county road to give me the kind of peace you can't buy in town. The house itself ain't much. 2-story, ranch style, all timber and sweat. My old man built it with his bare hands, and when the place passed to me, I swore I'd keep it the way he did. Honest, clean, and without a single HOA letter in my goddamn mailbox. For years it stayed that way. Just me, my dogs, some cattle, and the kind of silence you don't realize you miss until you've had it. No gates, no fences, just land and the knowledge that every inch of it was mine. That peace ended on a Tuesday. I had just gotten back from a feed run, pulling up in my old Ford with the sun halfway down and my dogs barking like they smelled something off. At first I didn't see it. I thought the shadows were playing tricks on me. Tall, rectangular silhouettes just off the gravel road. But as I crested the ridge near the south pasture, I saw them clear as day. 3 enormous billboard signs. Hammered right into the goddamn soil. Glossy, metal-framed, bright colors screaming like carnival barkers. Live beautifully, welcome to Sunny Hills HOA. Luxury homes, secure communities, elevated living. And the third one, Jesus, a 20-foot banner featuring a bleach-blonde woman in a blazer with folded arms and a smug grin that could curdle milk. Meet Karen Blitt, president of the future. My brakes squealed like a dying pig. I got out slow, heart pounding not with fear, but that deep, hot-bellied insult only landowners know. The kind that rises when someone pisses on your property and calls it landscaping. The billboards weren't just near my land, they were on it. I knew the lines like the back of my weather-beaten hands. My father and I had pounded those corner posts in 20 years ago with rebar and sweat. These signs were planted a good 10 feet over the southern boundary. I took out my phone, snapped pictures, then pulled the drone out of the barn to get overhead shots. I wanted angle, scale, everything, evidence. Because this wasn't just someone's mistake. This was deliberate, planned, paid for, installed. The next morning I drove straight to the Sunny Hills HOA office, a faux stone building surrounded by manicured petunias and passive-aggressive charm. Inside it smelled like lemon disinfectant and entitlement. I asked to speak with Karen Blitt. She came out of her glass-walled office like she was about to announce a company merger. Mid-40s, perfect nails, surgically confident. Her smile was the kind people wear to funerals and foreclosure hearings. Mr. Grayson, Thomas Grayson. I own the property adjacent to your southern development. Her smile twitched like she'd just swallowed something sour. Ah, yes. We've had some contact with that land. Beautiful parcel. Quite a view from the east cul-de-sac. You're also trespassing, I said, handing her the photos. 3 billboards, my property. That's theft of land use and unauthorized installation. Karen took the photos like they were unimportant printouts from a fax machine. She gave a shallow glance and placed them on her desk without looking up. I believe those were installed by our marketing contractor. Likely just a boundary miscalculation. I crossed my arms. 10 feet over isn't a miscalculation. Well, I'm sure it's something we can review at our next committee session, she said, already trying to guide me toward the door. In the meantime, the signs will stay. They're under contract. Not on my land, they're not. She paused, just a beat too long, then leaned on that fake friendly tone that people like her use right before they call the sheriff on you. Mr. Grayson, you don't really want to get combative. These signs bring attention to the area, to local development. Property values go up. Everyone wins. I don't care if they bring Jesus himself. You've got 72 hours to get those signs off my land. Karen tilted her head. We'll consider your request. That was the first time I smiled. Just a little. The kind of smile I learned overseas, the kind that meant you have no idea how much trouble you've just bought yourself. I walked out of there not with doubt but clarity. They were going to play dumb, maybe even dig in. But they didn't know me yet. They would. I waited exactly 72 hours, no more, no less. I spent that time walking my property line twice a day, boots crunching over dry grass, waiting to see a pickup or crane or any sign those smug bastards were going to do the right thing. Nothing. The billboards just stood there like middle fingers stabbed into the land my father bled to buy. So I sent the first letter, formal, certified with aerial imagery, legal parcel data, and my demand. Gave them 7 days. I didn't want to escalate. Hell, I was hoping someone over there would finally check a goddamn map. On the 5th day, I got their response. It came in a manila envelope hand-delivered to my gate by a kid in a Sunny Hills HOA polo. I didn't even open it on the porch. I took it straight to the kitchen, poured a shot of bourbon, and read it with my boots still on. The letter said, and I quote, that HOA reserves the right to utilize peripheral community-adjacent land as designated in its revised community map, attached herein. Revised community map? That got my heart pumping like a jackhammer. I pulled out the attachment and looked at the map. It was different. Their lot boundaries had suddenly ballooned outward like a cancerous growth, now swallowing up a 5-acre strip of land along their southern edge. My southern edge. Right where the billboards were. They were claiming my land. No call, no knock, no negotiation. Just a cheap, full-color printed lie with my dirt shaded in pastel blue like it belonged to them. I took that map straight to my land use attorney in Lubbock, Henry Durant, a guy built like a tree stump and twice as stubborn. He spent 30 minutes flipping through my deed, the HOA's claims, and the county land survey before shaking his head. They forged this boundary expansion, he said. No formal annexation, no county hearing, no vote. They just printed this crap and assumed you'd roll over. Can I bulldoze the signs now? He laughed. Legally? Not yet, but we can get ready. Start with a cease and desist, serve it certified. I'll prep for a restraining order if they push harder. We did just that. 3 days later, while I was out checking fence posts near the creek bed, a black Silverado pulled up near the billboard site. I watched from a distance, hat low, hands dirty, staying just out of sight. 2 guys stepped out, both in matching polos, some marketing outfit by the looks of it. One started taking measurements, the other lit a cigarette and looked over his shoulder like he didn't want to be seen. I walked up slow. Afternoon, I said. Both froze. The smoker turned, took one look at me and forced a grin. Hey, just doing some maintenance on the signage. On land you don't own? He didn't answer. I pointed to my no trespassing sign nailed into the oak about 10 feet away. You see that? Look, man, he said, lowering his voice. I don't care whose land it is. I'm just doing what the contract says. HOA paid up front. But between you and me, he glanced around like we were on camera. If you want this to go away quietly, I can talk to my boss. Maybe we work something out. Something like? 10 grand, he said casually. You give us a cash settlement, we'll call off the contract, pull the signs ourselves, and file it as a logistics error. No noise, no drama. I laughed, loud, from the gut. Son, do I look like a man who pays people to walk off his land? He didn't reply, just gave a little shrug like it was worth a try. You got 30 seconds to leave before I call the sheriff. They left. I watched that black truck bounce down the gravel road like a kicked dog. Back at the house, I wrote it all down. Names, plates, descriptions. I made copies of the forged map, sent it to the county with a formal complaint, and scanned everything to my lawyer. Meanwhile, Henry filed a formal cease and desist against both the HOA, the marketing firm. He even looped in a local land commissioner to investigate the phony boundary claims. I was ready to give them every chance to fix this. But with every move they made, it was clear. They didn't care what was legal. They cared what they could get away with. And I was about done letting them. They had their chance. I gave them more than enough rope to untie the knot they wrapped around my land. Instead, they tried to hang me with it. 7 days after sending the cease and desist, not a single sign had been removed. Not one email, no phone calls, no "oops, our bad." Just silence, the smug corporate kind that stinks worse than manure in the July heat. The signs kept standing tall, like monuments to arrogance. So I got to work. First, I rigged my trail cams. Not just the cheap motion-activated kind for deer, but proper high-def security cams with night vision, cloud backup, and timestamps. One on the approach road, one on the south fence line, one on the signs themselves. I wasn't going to be the crazy rancher yelling into the void. I'd be the man with evidence. Then I called in a favor from an old buddy of mine who runs equipment rentals west of Abilene. "Need a bulldozer," I said. "Nothing fancy, just enough horsepower to flatten steel and send a message." He chuckled. "Didn't take you for the go loud type, Tom." "Didn't used to be," I said, "but people change." The next morning, just before sunrise, I had the dozer trailered in and dropped at my gate. Quiet, no press, no audience, just me, a steel beast, and 3 oversized lies waiting to be dismantled. I parked my truck near the signs and climbed into the machine. The engine roared to life with the kind of thunder that shakes your bones and wakes the dead. I gave it a moment, then eased the blade down and inched forward. The first billboard didn't stand a chance. The base crumpled like soda cans under a boot. The steel frame groaned, tilted, and came down in a slow-motion collapse that kicked up dust and shattered plastic. I took out the second one the same way, blade low and steady. I felt every vibration through the seat, and I savored it. When I lined up the third sign, the one with Karen's smug face and her arms folded like she ruled the goddamn county, I paused, just for a moment. Then I drove straight through it. The metal split, the printed vinyl tore like flesh, and the whole thing flipped backward into a mess of bent poles and corporate ego. I stepped down from the cab, took out my phone, and started uploading the footage to every platform I could think of. YouTube, Facebook, X, even the local news tip line. Title: HOA trespasses. Landowner responds. I didn't even have time to finish uploading before I saw flashing lights coming down the gravel road. Sheriff's Department, 2 cruisers, both of them rolled up quick, tires spitting dust. Out stepped Deputy Wallace, young, tight uniform, radio on one hip, attitude on the other. He was followed by Sergeant Kilroy, older, cooler, the kind of man who's seen too much to be impressed by Billboards or Bull. "You Grayson?" Wallace barked. "I am." "You operate this equipment?" "I do." "You aware you just destroyed property?" I nodded. "Property illegally installed on land I own." Kilroy raised a hand, motioned Wallace to hold. "Mr. Grayson," he said, calm as a preacher, "do you have documentation confirming this land is yours?" "Sure do." I pulled the folder from my truck, handed it over. Deed, parcel map, coordinates, photos, even a copy of the cease and desist. Wallace took one look and frowned. "This is some kind of stunt." Kilroy ignored him, took his time with the documents, read everything twice. then looked out at the wreckage of twisted metal and torn vinyl. "I'd say it's more of a correction," he muttered. That's when Karen showed up. She came speeding down the road in her pristine white SUV, slammed the brakes so hard dust flew up around her like she was trying to make a dramatic entrance. She stormed out, heels stabbing into the dirt, waving her phone around like a weapon. "This man," she screamed, "has just committed a felony. He destroyed community property, he endangered lives, he threatened public interests." Kilroy turned. "Ma'am, I've reviewed the documents. This land is not part of your HOA. These signs were placed without legal authority." Karen froze, just for a second, then launched into another tirade. "He has a history of hostility. He made threats. He told our contractor he would handle things personally." I looked at her, calm, cold. "I did," I said, "and I just did." Karen's face flushed so red she looked sunburnt. "You're going to pay for this. HOA will be pressing full charges. You'll hear from our lawyers." "Good," I said. "So will you." Kilroy tried not to smirk. "I suggest everyone take a step back and let the courts handle it from here." I stood there, boots covered in dust and vinyl shreds, while Karen shrieked into her phone and the deputies filed their report. No cuffs, no arrest, no fine, just the soft hum of justice starting to wake up. And behind me, nothing but empty ground where their empire of lies used to stand. 2 days after the dozer hit steel, I got served. A process server in khakis and mirrored shades pulled up to my gate like he was delivering pizza, handed me a thick stack of papers and mumbled, "You've been named in a civil action by Sunny Hills HOA. Have a great day." I didn't even blink. I brought the documents inside, poured myself a cup of black coffee, no sugar, no comfort, and started reading. The HOA was coming at me with everything they had: claims of willful destruction of community property, reckless endangerment, defamation, and even emotional distress caused to community leadership. That last one, you could almost hear Karen crying while her lawyer dictated it. They were suing for $250,000 in damages. It was official. We were going to war. Henry, my lawyer, read through the paperwork with a slow shake of his head. "They're bluffing with gasoline," he muttered. "This isn't about money. It's about making an example out of you. They want people to see what happens when someone pushes back." "Well," I said, "let's show them what happens when someone pushes harder." We filed a Hunt countersuit within the week: trespassing, fraud, property misuse, reputation damage. Henry tacked on a formal complaint to the county zoning board, the real estate commission, and even the state bar. He was on fire. Meanwhile, I put out my own press statement with the footage of the bulldozing legal documents, GPS data, and the forged map side by side with the real one. The internet had a field day. Local news called me the Lone Rancher. National outlets picked it up as a case of HOA overreach, and one meme account dubbed me the Billboard Reaper. I didn't care about the noise. What mattered was that the truth was louder than their lies, which is probably why Karen panicked. I found out when I got a burner email from someone calling themselves Kate Miller. It contained internal HOA meeting minutes, budget records, and a juicy little PDF labeled "Von Boundary Revisions, Internal Only." The sender signed off as Corey. I didn't know the name yet, but I knew gold when I saw it. The internal memo showed what we already suspected. Karen had ordered the signs before. Any boundary revision was drafted, let alone approved. One message even said, "Let's get them up first. We can sort the paperwork later. Grayson's a recluse, probably won't care." Another gem? A budget line labeled "Expedited Mapping Consultation, no paper trail." I sent the whole file to Henry. He damn near choked on his lunch. Holy hell, he said. This isn't just a bad lawsuit. This is fraud, conspiracy, and abuse of authority. We subpoenaed the HOA's internal communications using Corey's files to build our foundation. Karen tried to block it. Judge wasn't having it. Now everything was on the table. But just when I thought things were boiling over, the contractor came back into the picture. This time, with teeth. He showed up at my gate at sunset, same black Silverado, same smug aura. Only now, he had company. A man in a suit stepped out first. Slippery handshake, clean teeth, fake smile. "Mr. Grayson," he said, "I'm here on behalf of Platinum Signage Group. We believe you may have made a serious mistake by damaging our equipment." "On my land," I reminded him. The contractor, now emboldened, stepped forward. "You ruined 6 figures worth of hardware, cowboy. We're giving you one last chance to settle out of court. Pay us and we stay out of the courtroom." I stared him down. "You threatening me?" "No, sir," the suit replied. "This is a business negotiation, but if you'd prefer threats..." He pulled out a file. "We have internal HOA contracts, expense reports, and, interestingly, text logs between our team and your lawyer's office." Bullshit, but dangerous bullshit. "You might want to keep this quiet," the contractor added. "It'd be a shame if a man like you got painted as unstable or aggressive." I stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "You know what happens to people who try to blackmail a rancher on his own land?" He hesitated. "What?" "They stop leaving." He backed up. "I've got cameras, I've got logs, and now I've got you, on record, trying to shake me down. Get off my land before you dig a deeper hole than your client already has." They left without another word, tires squealing like scared coyotes. That night I gave the footage to Henry. He handed it to the sheriff. Shakedown attempt, intimidation, possible RICO violations if we dug deep enough. This thing was bigger than HOA politics now. "And the best part?" Corey messaged again. "They're panicking. I'll send more soon. You're not alone." The courtroom smelled like old wood and stale ambition. It was a small county courthouse, the kind with squeaky floors, a dusty flag in the corner, and a judge's bench that had probably seen more divorces and DUIs than landmark property cases. But today, it was packed. Reporters, locals, HOA members. Half the damn Sunny Hills development was there, clutching their tote bags and HOA newsletters like prayer books. And there I was, front and center, flanked by Henry in his pressed suit and worn cowboy boots, like a man ready to either litigate or lasso a cow. Across from us sat Karen, wearing a navy blazer too tight for her posture, and an expression that hovered somewhere between righteous fury and Botox paralysis. Beside her were 3 attorneys from some regional firm that specialized in HOA litigation, probably the kind that billed by the breath. The judge entered. Court was called to order. Then the circus began. The HOA lawyers came out swinging, called me unstable, dangerous, a threat to public decorum. They played a dramatized compilation of my bulldozing video over courtroom screens, complete with slow motion and ominous music like they were pitching it to Netflix. They brought up my military record, which I had proudly included in my filings, and tried twisting it into aggression. They cited noise complaints from Sunny Hills, none of which had any police report, and even called a resident who claimed she was emotionally traumatized by seeing Karen's face torn in half on the billboard. Karen dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue like a community martyr. Then it was our turn. Henry stood, calm, cold, deadly. He opened with the basics: title deed, satellite maps, surveyor records, property lines so clear even a first grader could see the signs were on my land. Then came the payload. Henry introduced Exhibit F. Internal emails and memos from Sunny Hills HOA. obtained via subpoena, authenticated by metadata, and traced back to Karen's own office. Let's get the signs up first. We'll deal with the paperwork later. We can widen the boundary line a bit on the southern end. Just make sure there's no trail back. My favorite? Grayson won't push back. He lives with cows. Cows don't sue. Laughter echoed in the courtroom. Even the judge smirked. Karen went pale. Then Henry dropped the hammer. A video deposition from Corey. Full name: Corey Miller, former treasurer of the HOA. It showed him on record explaining how Karen coerced board members to sign off on unapproved expenditures, forged notary seals for a fake land expansion plan, and silenced dissenters with threats of legal ruin. The courtroom went dead quiet. Karen's lawyers objected. The judge overruled. Corey's evidence was admissible, and the judge ordered the entire HOA's records opened for audit. It was like watching a dam crack. But it wasn't over. Henry called on Platinum Signage Group to notier the contractor town to the stand. Their regional manager testified that Karen ordered the signs to be placed on community-aligned territory, which she assured them was HOA-owned. No contract was filed with the county, no right-of-way granted, nothing. We showed phone logs, payment records. One call was made. Minutes after my bulldozing video went viral. Karen had called them screaming and left a voicemail threatening to sue them stinodet for installing too close to the road, even though she had picked the location. Then came the final piece. Henry introduced a forensic document expert who proved, beyond doubt, that the so-called revised boundary map submitted by the HOA had been edited. Sloppily, digitally. The signature of a county land official had been copy-pasted from a public filing 5 years old. The judge stared at Karen. "Ms. Blitt," he said, slow and thunderous, "have you or anyone under your direction submitted falsified documents to this court?" Karen stammered. I didn't. I was told." "Answer the question." Silence. Then her lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client invokes the Fifth on the advice of counsel." That was it. The judge called for a recess. Cameras flashed. Reporters stormed the hallway. HOA members in the gallery looked like someone had just announced the community pool was filled with acid. Karen wouldn't meet my eyes, but I met hers, steady, level, as if to say, "This is what truth looks like when it fights back." The verdict came down 3 weeks later. By then, the courthouse had become something between a tourist attraction and a battlefield memorial. Bloggers and talking heads circled the case like vultures. Local diners were serving Grayson grits and Karen's cowardice sandwich. I didn't care much for the noise, but I noticed the change. When I walked into town, people nodded, tipped their hats. Not because I was a hero, but because I was right, and I hadn't backed down. That day in court, the air felt different, heavy but expectant. Everyone knew the ship was sinking. They just wanted to hear the splash. Karen showed up late. Her hair was flatter, her eyes red. Her usual army of attorneys was down to one junior associate with a coffee stain on his tie. Corey was there too, seated in the gallery. He gave me a small nod. I returned it. Judge Alvarez entered, robe flowing like judgment itself. After reviewing all evidence, he began, including authenticated documentation, sworn testimony, and the undisputed facts of property ownership, this court finds in favor of the defendant, Mr. Thomas Grayson, on all counts. There was a beat of silence, then murmurs, then a half-hearted clap from someone in the back. But the judge wasn't done. This court further finds that the plaintiff, the Sunny Hills Homeowners Association, knowingly submitted falsified documentation, trespassed on private land, and engaged in a pattern of deceptive conduct. Karen visibly flinched. As such, the judge continued, this court orders the following. 1. The HOA is to pay on $850,000 in total compensation to Mr. Grayson, covering legal fees, property misuse, emotional damages, and punitive damages for bad faith litigation. A collective gasp rolled through the room. 2. The court refers Ms. Karen Blitt to the district attorney's office for investigation into document falsification, perjury, and abuse of position. Karen started whispering furiously to her lawyer. Didn't help. 3. The Sunny Hills HOA is placed under state-supervised audit for a period of 12 months. All discretionary authority of its current board is suspended. Elections for new leadership will be conducted under oversight. You could feel the foundations of her little empire crumbling. The judge's gavel hit wood like thunder. Court adjourned. Karen stood like a woman on a sinking ship, still trying to argue with the tide. Her lawyer pulled her aside, whispering something urgent. She tried to glare at me on the way out, but her eyes didn't have the same venom anymore. Just exhaustion. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded the steps. Microphones in faces, flashbulbs going off. Someone asked me if I had a statement. I kept it simple. I didn't fight because I wanted to, I said. I fought because I had to. My land, my rules, that's America. They ate it up. Over the next few days, the news made it to national networks. HOA forums across the country lit up with debate. Some called me a menace. Others said I was a symbol. People started digging into their own HOA charters like they were planning revolutions. Back at home, things were quieter. I replaced the crushed dirt near the fence line with wildflowers. Burned what was left of the billboard frames. Repainted my boundary markers in bold red. Not because I was afraid they'd try again. Because I wanted to remind myself that the line held. That week, I got a letter in the mail from Corey. Typed, clean, sealed with his name at the bottom. No apology. Just a thank you. Said he'd turned over more records to the DA and was cooperating fully. Said he quit the HOA the day after the verdict. Said he hoped to one day shake my hand in public instead of whispering in the dark. I poured a glass of bourbon, stepped out onto the porch, and watched the sunset bleed across my land like a silent flag of victory. No sirens, no speeches, just peace. The kind you only earn by fighting like hell for it. 6 months later, the only thing standing where those billboards used to be was a handmade sign nailed to a cedar post. Private land. Respect it or get flattened. Underneath it, I set up a picnic table, reclaimed wood, iron legs, shaded by an old pecan tree. Sometimes I sat there in the evenings with a cigar and a beer, just watching the wind roll over the grass like a lazy wave. Peace had finally settled over the ranch like dust after a long, loud stampede, but the story didn't end in the courtroom. Not really. A few weeks after the verdict, the Ma County Commissioner's Office invited me to attend a panel on HOA reform. I nearly laughed them off until they said, "You won. Now help others do the same." So I showed up in a clean shirt, left the hat at home, and gave the most unpolished speech of my life. People applauded anyway. Even got invited back. Then came the letters, not from lawyers but homeowners. From Iowa, Arizona, Oregon. People thanking me, asking how to push back, asking what tools I used. I never expected to be the poster boy for HOA resistance, but hell, if the boot fits. Sunny Hills, meanwhile, fell apart like a poorly built gazebo in a tornado. Karen's name disappeared from their website. Word was she moved to Florida, the natural habitat for disgraced HOA queens, I suppose. Last I heard, she was consulting on community development, which is bureaucrat for nobody will hire me, so I'm pretending I still matter. Corey, on the other hand, finally came by the ranch, drove up in an old Subaru, stepped out looking nervous as hell. "I owed you a handshake," he said. I poured him some iced tea and we sat by the cedar post looking out over the south field. We didn't talk about Karen or the court or the press, just life, cattle, fencing, weather, real things. Turns out Corey was trying to help from the beginning. He just didn't know how to fight people like her until someone showed it could be done. Later that evening, some neighbors from 2 ridgelines over stopped by. They brought pie. Said they'd heard I was planning a cookout and wanted in. I hadn't actually planned anything, but hell, it sounded like a good idea. So I grilled. Ribs, brisket, corn. People brought folding chairs and lawn games. Kids ran around. Someone even set up a Bluetooth speaker and blasted Waylon Jennings. And there we were, out on the edge of the land they'd once tried to claim. Drinking, laughing, living. No banners, no bylaws, no trespassers, just freedom.